After publishing a report about the wrongdoings of a businessman named Wennerstrom, a journalist named Mikael is charged to court for defamation. Despite being sure of what he got from one of his sources, Mikael loses the case and gets painted as a bad guy by the media. He heads back to his workplace, where he meets with his co-editor Erica, who is a close friend and spends much time together. She tells him that things are not looking good for him after the judgment, and Mikael says he's heading home to think of his next move. Elsewhere, a man named Armansky hires a hacker for his friend Frode, who needs one to look into Mikael's life. Later on, the hacker, Lisbeth, meets with the men to give her final report. Frode closely examines her findings on Mikael, saying he needs to know if the journalist is totally clean before recommending him to his boss, who needs him for a special case. The meeting soon ends, and later that night, Lisbeth takes an interest in the Wennerstrom case and decides to find ways to get more details about the businessman. Meanwhile, Mikael is at a Christmas party when he suddenly gets a call from Frode, who says his boss, Henrik, wants to give him a job. Mikael doesn't look interested because of his current situation with Wennerstrom, but Frode convinces him to visit Henrik's home to at least hear what he has to say. Despite feeling reluctant, Mikael agrees. The next day, Frode picks him up at the train station, and they head to the house to meet Henrik, who warmly welcomes the journalist. After initially talking about himself, Henrik tells Mikael that he needs him because he's a journalist who doesn't stop looking for answers. He says that while he would want people to think Mikael is writing a book about him, the work he'll actually be doing is to find the killer of his brother's granddaughter, Harriet, who Frode thinks was killed by a family member. He says that on the morning of the day she was killed, Harriet had come to him, saying she wanted to tell him something. However, he was too busy and told her to meet him later. Shortly after, an accident occurs very close to the house, and all the occupants have to go outside to see what's happening. He then mentions that after the accident, Harriet was seen leaving the house by the maid, Anna, and that was the last time anyone saw her. Mikael says it's possible she just ran away from home, but Henrik says she couldn't have gone far without anyone seeing her. He then takes Mikael to the basement of the house, where he says that whoever killed her was someone really close because they knew what Harriet always gave to him on his birthday. He then tells Mikael that since she died, he has still been receiving the exact same kind of gift, and it seems that the killer is trying to play tricks with him. Mikael is not so sure about taking up the job since it happened many years ago, but Henrik convinces him to do it. He offers to double the journalist's current salary and also promises to give him relevant information that can help him take down Wennerstrom. Mikael agrees and heads back home to get his things. He also meets with Erica and tells her he'll be away for a while. She doesn't look happy with his decision, but he says he'll always be one call away. He then travels back to Henrik to stay in his assigned apartment. Not long after getting there, he sees a cat at the entrance and lets her into the house. After settling in, Mikael meets Henrik, who informs him that most of his family members still live on the island, where his old house is also located. With this, Mikael starts working on the case after he receives several boxes containing all that he needs. The first thing he does is to call a retired detective named Morell, who was assigned to Harriet's case after she went missing. Morell says he found the case interesting because there was no motive or reason for anyone to harm Harriet. Mikael then shows Morell a diary belonging to Harriet, which he found in one of the boxes he was given. He points out that he saw some numbers and names at the back, and Morell says he also saw it during his time working on the case, but mentions that it led him to a dead end. Morell then says that Harriet's case is similar to another case of a lady named Rebecca, whose killer was never found by the detective on the case. Elsewhere, Lisbeth's guardian suffers a stroke, so she's assigned to a new person named Bjorman. In her first meeting with him, he mentions that he won't be giving her money on request, and that she'll have to bring a receipt for her expenses before he gives her any money. Despite telling him that she deserves more, Bjorman insists that he'll be doing things in his own way, and this pisses Lisbeth, who then angrily walks out. As she's going home, someone steals her bag, but she manages to get hold of the person and retrieve it. However, her laptop gets damaged in the process, and after taking it to a repair guy, she realizes that she needs to get a new one. Days after arriving at Henrik's home, Mikael decides to visit Harriet's brother Martin. On his way, Martin's wife Liv picks Mikael up and leads him into the house. After a while, Liv talks about the book Mikael is writing for Henrik and asks if he has heard of what happened to Harriet. He says he has, and Liv says it's worrying that the family tries so hard not to talk about it. Martin then hears them talking about his sister and says he would love for her to be a part of Henrik's book. The next day, while he's at home, Henrik's niece, Cecilia, visits Mikael. As she enters his apartment, she sees the pictures of all the family members on the wall, and this forces her to ask if he's writing a book about the family. However, Mikael says it's only about Henrik. As she sees Harriet's picture on the wall, Cecilia also asks him if he's there to work on her case. Again, Mikael says his main focus is on Henrik, but he asks Cecilia if she can tell him something about Harriet. She says she wasn't close to Harriet, and if he wants to get details about her, he needs to go and see her sister Anita, who has relocated to London after getting tired of the family's frequent troubles. Meanwhile, Lisbeth goes to see her guardian to ask for some money to get a new laptop. However, he says he can't give her because he doesn't get why she needs an expensive laptop when she has no active job. Shortly after, he says that the only way she'll be getting favors from him is if she agrees to have an affair with him. The next day, Mikael travels to London to see Anita. He introduces himself as a writer for Henrik's book, and as they're talking about her uncle, he manages to bring up Harriet. He asks Anita what she knows about the missing girl, but she says Harriet was messed up and her parents weren't the best. Elsewhere, Lisbeth calls Björman for yet another favor, and he tells her to come to his house. When she gets there, he tries to harass her again. A while later, Mikael starts looking at some old photos of Henrik's family at a public event. He sees one with Harriet in it, but because there are no other copies, he decides to go to the photography studio that took the pictures. Mikael is able to find the place, and he's also lucky to get other pictures taken at the event. Meanwhile, Lisbeth calls Björman and requests to meet up. However, when she gets to his house, she knocks him out and ties him up. She also shows him that she recorded the video of him harassing her, and that if he tries to harm her or refuses to give her money when she wants, then she'll release the video and ruin his career. That night, while Mikael is looking at the pictures he recently got, he notices that Harriet saw something that scared her and also made her leave the event. With this, he realizes that someone might have killed her because of something she knew. The next day, Mikael's daughter Pernilla visits him. She sees the work he's doing, and after they spend some time together, she decides to leave. Just as her train is about to move, Pernilla tells him to take things easy with Henrik's family, who she calls Catholics. Just as Mikael looks confused because Henrik's family members are not Catholics, Pernilla says she saw some Bible verses in a book inside his apartment. As soon as he returns, Mikael realizes that Pernilla is talking about the numbers in Harriet's diary. He checks the Bible and sees that the verses are about the ways bad people in the Bible were killed. Mikael immediately goes to call Morell to ask about the Rebecca case. During the call, he asks for Rebecca's full name and how she died. After Morell tells him, Mikael discovers that the names and initials in the diary are for women who were killed by the person who might have also killed Harriet. Just then, he sees an ambulance leaving the house, and as he runs back to see what happened, he sees Martin, who tells him that Henrik has collapsed. Days later, Frode visits Mikael and tells him that Henrik is yet to recover. This forces Mikael to ask if he'll still get what he was promised. Frode says he will, but he adds that he's sure Mikael won't find anything. However, Mikael says he already found something, but as Frode asks him what it is about, he says he needs a research assistant. Frode says he knows someone who would fit perfectly in the role, and that it's the same person who did Mikael's background check. Mikael is not too pleased to hear about the background check, but Frode tells him to meet with Armansky to get Lisbeth's contact. When the two men meet, Armansky says he doesn't want to put Lisbeth in danger because she's a ward of the state, but Mikael convinces him to give up her location, after which he goes to her apartment. When he gets there, Lisbeth looks surprised to see him, but he says he has a job for her. He shows her the Bible verses and the initials in Harriet's diary, saying he needs to find out about the other women who were also killed. She agrees to work for him, and it only takes a while for her to find the women's full names. After she also gets information from her contact in the police department, she sees that all the women died just as described in the Bible verses. Meanwhile, Mikael goes to the hospital to see Henrik. He meets Frode, who says his boss is still not responsive. As they're talking, Martin's mother, Isabella, sees Mikael and insults him for coming to the hospital despite not being family. She also seems particularly annoyed that he's writing a book about Henrik. Mikael eventually leaves, and later that night, Martin comes over to say sorry for what happened at the hospital. He also says he'll keep his mom away so that Mikael can continue his work. Just then, Lisbeth arrives at the house. When she gets inside, she tells Mikael about what she found regarding the names in Harriet's diary, and he looks shocked to hear that there were other victims Harriet didn't even write about. In the morning, Mikael sees a picture of a couple with a camera and tries to see if there's a way he can locate them from an inscription on their car. Just as he steps outside to get some air, he sees that his cat has been killed and dropped in front of his apartment. He's disgusted by this, and as he and Lisbeth look at the dead cat, they wonder who must have done it. They soon head out to the city to start another day of research. Luckily, Mikael is able to find someone who knows the couple in the picture, but he learns that only the wife is still alive. He later locates the woman, and after he politely asks if she kept some of the pictures she took that day, she says she did. With this, Mikael is able to get the pictures, but he doesn't know what to make of them. The next day, while Mikael's looking around Henrik's residence, someone tries to shoot him, but he's lucky to only get a small cut on his head. He returns to the house to meet Lisbeth, who helps him clean his wound. Mikael then reports this to Frode and Martin, but both men are left shocked by what happened. Mikael then asks for access to the private files of the family's chain of industries. Frode and Martin are unsure about this, especially since the files are meant to be private. However, since he's in charge of the business, Martin tells Frode to give Mikael anything he needs. After the meeting, Mikael tells Lisbeth to help him go through the files. He tells her to find out if the family has any businesses in the places where the women in Harriet's diary were killed. When he gets back home to work on something else, Mikael comes across a picture where Cecilia's father, Harold, is holding a camera at the scene of the accident that happened on the day Harriet went missing. He asks Cecilia about it, but she directs him to her father, saying she can't help him. Mikael decides to meet Harold himself, and after seeing him, he asks for some of his old pictures. After taking a look at what Harold shows him, he sees a picture of Martin and takes a copy home, only to see that Harriet's brother is the same person in the picture he got from the widow. Mikael also realizes that Martin was the one who got Harriet so scared that she left the event. Lisbeth also finds out that the family had businesses in all the locations where the women were killed. More interestingly, she discovers that all the businesses are linked to Martin's father, Gottfried. She also goes through some old pictures and concludes that Martin is the bad guy. Mikael then decides to check inside Martin's house to see if he can find anything. Luckily, Martin is not at home, and he's able to sneak in. However, it doesn't take long before Martin returns home. Mikael quickly escapes, but just as he's about to leave, Martin sees him. He tells Mikael to come in for a drink so he can ask him some questions. Mikael looks incredibly nervous as Martin asks if he has anything to report. Just as he says there's nothing new, he sees Martin's gun and realizes that he was the one who tried to kill him some days ago. Martin also figures out that Mikael has found out what he did, so he brings out another gun from his drawer and threatens to kill him. He then leads the journalist into a room where he gets knocked out by a strange gas. Meanwhile, Lisbeth tries to call Mikael to warn him about Martin, but the call doesn't go through, and because of this, she heads to his house. When Mikael wakes up, he sees that Martin has already tied him up. Martin asks him what he really found, and he says he saw a picture that exposed him. After a while, Martin starts confessing to killing the women because they were bad people. Mikael then accuses him of killing Harriet despite being a good person, but this seems to leave Martin shocked. He, however, says that Mikael is a bad detective. Elsewhere, Lisbeth gets to Mikael's house, but when she doesn't see him, she starts to get suspicious that something might have happened to him. She checks the cameras in the house and figures out where Martin took Mikael. Shortly after, Martin picks up his knife to kill Mikael slowly, but before he starts, Lisbeth shows up and knocks him out. Lisbeth quickly rescues Mikael, but as Martin tries to escape, Mikael tells her to follow him. She picks up Martin's gun and goes outside to see that he's already leaving with his car. She also gets on her bike and chases him until his car crashes. As she goes closer to kill him, his car blows up and he dies. Lisbeth then returns to meet Mikael, and while they're talking, Mikael says he thinks Harriet actually ran away from home. He says that even though Martin confessed to killing the other ladies, he looked shocked when he was accused of killing Harriet. Mikael then says that if Harriet actually escaped, there's only one person who would know. He then looks at a picture of Anita and remembers how Cecilia says she was really close to Harriet. He goes to London to inform Anita of Martin's death, but she says she doesn't care. A while later, Lisbeth hacks into Anita's phone and laptop to see if she'll call anyone. After waiting for a long time, Lisbeth concludes that the reason Anita hasn't called Harriet is because she's dead. However, Mikael says there's another possibility, and it's that Anita might be Harriet. He goes to her workplace the next day and accuses her of being Harriet, and she's unable to deny it. Shortly after, she takes him outside her office and narrates how her father and brother always harassed her. She got tired of everything and eventually killed her father, only for Martin to see it happen. She says she tried to tell Henrik everything that happened, but she was scared of Martin, who happens to be just like her father. She also adds that Martin eventually got sent to a school far away from home, But on the day of that event, she saw him return and knew she was in trouble. Luckily, Anita was able to help her, and together, they devised a plan to escape. Since then, she changed her identity to avoid having anything to do with her family. She also mentions that Anita is dead, and that's why she was able to take her name. But Mikael tells her there's no need to worry anymore because Martin is dead. Days later, Henrik recovers and gets released from the hospital. He immediately meets with Mikael and asks what he found, and Mikael helps him reunite with Harriet. However, Henrik doesn't give him enough proof to get Wennerstrom arrested. Mikael's not too happy with this, but as he complains, Lisbeth tells him about how she hacked Wennerstrom's devices and found some incriminating things. She gives him all he needs, and Mikael gets Erica to publish it, even though she's initially unsure about it. But Lisbeth's proof turns out to be just enough to get Wennerstrom to face scrutiny. To make things worse, she meets with Mikael and asks him to lend her some money. After he gives her, she uses it to process multiple accounts, after which she hacks into Wennerstrom's account and diverts some of the money he stole. The detectives on the case discover what's happening, but since it's all in Wennerstrom's name, he gets arrested, and Mikael gets his reputation back. Lisbeth soon returns Mikael's money to him and asks where he'll be later that day. He says he'll be spending time with his daughter, and she tells him that she'll see him soon. She then gets him an expensive jacket and writes him a lovely message. However, when she's about to deliver it to him, she sees Mikael leaving his house with Erica. Lisbeth gets angry and throws the jacket into the dumpster, after which she heads home.